taken up along with our partner Changing to have a workshop and a discussion on the subject of dyslexia at work. For many of you, it may sound like a new word, like it was for me a couple of days back till the time we were approached by our partners. We would have heard this word, but we would have never deliberated upon it. We would have never gone into the depth of it. But while we were preparing this workshop with our partners, we realized that this has something much more than the word itself or the definition of the subject which we are talking about it. So what we are attempting towards today's workshop is to actually make you understand the topic in hand, what is dyslexia, and why dyslexia is not something which you can just be shy away or talking about it, but what are the additional things which it comes about it. So if we there are few figures which we have got it through our research and which is of course available. What we've got to know is that almost 20% population of the world is dyslexic. So when we talk about that numbers, so 1 out of 5 amongst all of us is also one of those kinds. Now, what is dyslexic? Of course, the veterans today, the speakers who have joined us would take you in depth. So I'll just give you a brief snapshot. It is kind of a special learning disability where you are, of course, having a problem with reading, comprehending information, how the functioning of the brain. So kind of, we would have heard of the term neurodiversity. So it comes under that. So when we, as Vicky, we were talking about it, and when the subject was brought to our notice, you know that as part of our team, we have been coming back to you with various technology-related subjects, various subjects which have been in hand related to the policy discussions. Then why dyslexia at work? So one of the important things which has been brought to our notice is the people with dyslexic mind, those people are the ones which are really related to the technological innovation. They are the creative minds of the world. And the history speaks for itself. Had it not been the dyslexic mind, we would have not got the telephone, Graham Bell, aeroplane, Wright brothers, and of course, the computers which we are using right now. So Bill Hewlett and of course, Steve Jobs. There are people currently also at various senior positions who are dyslexic, but have been able to perform extremely well. So something which has come out is that when you are a dyslexic, there is a hidden potential which comes in a person, which needs to be nurtured so that we can have, I would say, the future-ready task force available for the organization. So within our companies, I mean, from the audience, I would say there are people who would be entrepreneurs. There will be people who are working for the companies who would have their kids in that at various age forms. And there would be students who have joined us today. So you would have noticed while you go into the depth of the subject today with our speakers, you will understand that you would have seen many of those people around, but would have not realized it, the real potential, would have not realized it, what exactly it is called, and then how they need to be made more part of the society because they have something called a really hidden talent. That is something will be brought together towards you with the various topics of discussion as well as the panel discussion which we have it today. So we are very thankful to our partner Change Inc., who has actually motivated Vicky to work with them on such a subject. They're a non-for-profit organization working on creating an inclusive society. Very important subject, cradle to career. That's a good motto. Thanks to Nupur. That's really impressive for us. And we look forward, as Vicky, we are also very much committed towards working on an inclusive society. And technology plays a very major role in that. So we are more than happy to work with the Change Inc. and the other partners with various these subject topic discussions in future as well, so that we can have the more inclusive and equitable society being created. So without further my discussion, I would hand it over to Nupur. Just few lines about her. A very modest person, of course, a very good friend of mine, but more than that, she is a parent advocate for a teenage dyslexic daughter, is a lifelong advocate of building equitable and inclusive societies. She has extensive experience in impacting national and global goals for disability rights, women empowerment, financial inclusion, education, and digital inclusion. Through her extensive experience of working across multiple geographies with intergovernmental organizations, state governments, and of course the various central governments of Indian ministries, she has successfully influenced regulation, negotiated financially sustainable multi-stakeholder partnerships, and implemented innovative business models to drive large-scale impact. I would now request Nupur to kindly take the center stage and take us through with the subject, which is on Introduction to Dyslexia and Special Learning Disabilities. Over to you, Nupur.
Thank you so much, Sarika, for that lovely introduction. We are very grateful that this Dyslexia Awareness Month, which is October, TICI has agreed to partner and support this very important cause. Without much ado, let me share my screen and get into the conversation. Please feel free to ask questions, post your questions as we go along. Just some house rules, please. I'm guessing all of you all are anyways muted, but a lot of times in our presentations in the past, we have seen that it brings out a lot of emotions for people, because you may realize that you may be battling some of this yourself, or you have a dear family member, a child, a parent, a sibling. So we are here to listen in case you all need to reach out. Happy to help in any way. This is a brief outlay, so here goes. What we will go through is understanding neurodiversity, specific learning disabilities, which cover dyslexia. How do these manifest? How they've impacted the world, and how basically this is relevant to your agenda in the workforce, right? Why are we asking you to actually start thinking about it? So really, specific learning disabilities, as per the Rights of Persons with Disability Act of India of 2016, recognizes specific learning disabilities as dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and dyspraxia. This forms the larger umbrella of neurodiversity, which is autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What is neurodiversity? It's really a different way that a person's brain is wired and processes information. So like we have people who have locomotive and other forms of disabilities, this is really a physical disability that manifests in the way the brain and the nervous system processes information, but it's not visible to the naked eye, right? Because it's internal to our body. Individuals with specific learning disabilities have average or above average intelligence. This is very important to note, right? These are not people who are slow learners, even though they may appear to be. The other point is that it's a lifelong condition. You don't get magically cured by this. You learn to cope with it, just like you wear glasses. You learn to cope with, glasses and better eyesight, but you never really get over it. It also runs in family, so it's hereditary. If you have one parent who is dyslexic, there's a 50% chance that the child will be. And if you have both parents who are dyslexic, then there's a 100% chance. Of course, sometimes it's uncles and aunts that may have it. We are seeing more and more that as children are getting diagnosed, parents are realizing that that's something that they are dealing with. Like I mentioned, it's an invisible disability. People often ask us, so how do you find out? There are psychometric tests that are undertaken, which test for IQ as well as other parameters to see how your brain is functioning. And some of the key challenges, of course, is unemployment and underemployment for these individuals, which is why we're having these conversations. So you think of a disability, you think of somebody, it's a rare occurrence, but like Sarika mentioned, it's 1 in 5. That's global data. That's about, I want to say 20% of our population. That translates to about 150 million Indians, of which 35 million are students. So it's a large chunk of people that we know. So like I mentioned, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, first time formally recognized specific learning disabilities in 2016. These are mandates that are, so the RPWD Act mandates equal opportunity in education and employment. In fact, there is reservation for them under the PWD category. This is reinforced once again by the new education policy of 2020. So we will start seeing a lot of skilled dyslexic coming out of our schools. And these are, India follows the mandate that US, UK, and other European nations actually have had for a long time. So how do these things manifest? Like, what am I talking about? So dyslexia impacts language. It accounts for about 80% of your SLDs. If you see the screen, the things are moving around, right? And the spellings are all jumbled, alphabets are like moving. This is how a dyslexic actually reads. So these are children who struggle with language. Reading may be slow, spellings may be a challenge. You think they're being lazy and careless, but they really are not, because their brain is not processing this information. Then the next is dysgraphia, which impacts writing. This is not a doctor's problem, right? Like they have really small and bad handwriting. This is really a motor skill issue where the coordination is not as great. So they take a lot of time to write, think, and translate that information. It also has to do with like coordination. So they may have challenges with left and right, tying the shoelace, buttoning up, things like that. Dyscalculia impacts math. It's about 5% of the population. It is not the 99% of us who hate maths in India. It really isn't. It's really the struggle with understanding mathematical concepts. Addition, subtraction, what does that mean? What does time mean? What does it mean that how much time is spent? Understanding, concepts of space, quantities. What does 1 kg weigh like? What does 1 kilometer versus 1 meter look like? Those kind of assessments are sometimes what these individuals struggle with. If you see on my screen, you have a 6 plus 5 equals 8. Then you have a 4 plus 5 equals 6, which is actually a 9, but inverted into a 6. A 5 into a 6 equal to 65, because the individual has not understood the concept of multiplication and just put the digits together. And below that, you will see 4 into 2 equals 8, and the 4 is flipped. So, these are the kind of things that happen when they do division. The numerator and denominator flip when they write, but they actually maybe thinking it right. They may not be able to read time in an analog, so they need digital clocks for that. If you tell them it's about 15 minutes have passed, they don't understand what 15 minutes means, things like that. So here we're going to hear from an individual who's an IIT Kanpur graduate, Vivek Khare, who'll share his experience.
The refrain was उसको आता सब कुछ है, ये पता नहीं एग्जाम में क्या करता है. Because when it came to spelling, my grammar was all over the place, and for whatever reasons, I'm not blaming the teachers. It maybe they themselves were clueless. The awareness about the dyslexia was not there, and therefore, when it came to the written exams, I was very poor. I was very good at maths. My science was good, but if everything had to be judged by the written words, then that used to fail me. And for me, then I never looked, but I was very good at maths. I gave my JEE twice. I cleared both the times. I wanted to do physics. I came and did physics. And again, the thing is that JEE again is a paper which does not judge you on your on your written skill. It's basically your logic and the maths. So there I've excelled. I was lucky enough to work for InfoEdge Group, which was a startup. And these places, I mean, the thing is, if you're good, it's pure meritocracy. So if you're good, you keep getting the opportunities.
So really, Vivek is a great example of somebody who's, a dyslexic thinker, because he not only succeeded in a competitive institution like IIT Kanpur, he's an angel investor for companies that have broken, are so innovative in this space that people didn't realize that what they could do were possible. So I just want you to start thinking about some of this as I speak about the challenges. So really, we've learned the academic bit, but actually what the other challenge with these individuals is that they have a challenge with their working memory. What is working memory? It's the RAM of the brain, right? It's that short-term stuff that processes instructions within the body and tells us what to do. So what does this really mean? Because the working memory is impacted, our day-to-day life for these individuals get impacted. They often have very, very poor self-esteem. It's because people think that they are low IQ because, they read badly, their writing is slow and shabby, they're terrible at spelling. So it's really, often for the lack of being politically correct, they're known as duffers, right? Like, you're so dumb. How can you be so, like, itna bhi nahi aata hai, to kya karega? It's that. And then there's this gap in oral and written performance. So it might be that friend of yours or colleague who really is always giving you gyan. Aise karenge, this is the strategy, overall picture, all of this. And then you ask him or her to write an email or document this, and that document takes forever to come, right? And so there's a real gap in the oral and written, and this is connected again with the challenges of dysgraphia. And then they have this problem with memory, where they have to follow multiple instructions at the same time. And this is because of, their working memory being in trouble. So it's like if you have a slow processing computer and you ask it to do open multiple windows, do multiple tasks at one point, it'll crash. It's really the same sort of the impact on them. So because they are slow at processing, that coordination of reading, recognizing the words, all of that becomes a challenge. And then the other challenge is they become overstimulated, right? Because there's so many people might be talking next to them. There must be action, and their brain now suddenly doesn't know what to concentrate on. There may be a conversation that's going on and people are talking all at once. So by the time they've processed what the first person has said, the fifth person has already spoken. So they're lost. And this overstimulation can result in a headache, a lot of like anxiety, anger, those kind of things. And then their challenges with this concept of maths really results in difficulties in planning. So they don't understand time management, right? Or they don't realize that maybe this document will take me 1 hour to work on, or this email will take me like 40 minutes or 10 minutes to send. So they don't know how to plan things. And those are the kind of things that they need support on. When they have that clarity, they're able to execute very, very quickly. So dyslexics are resilient. They are some of the most hardworking people who are committed to the tasks that they are assigned. And with the right support, they do find ways to cope and succeed. And here's another story of somebody who's leading AI innovation in our country.
After 12, when you actually choose your career options, and I had an option to choose art and everything else. So I did give my art exam, and I was in Mumbai at that time, and JJ School of Arts is like one of the prestigious colleges in arts, and I did their entrance exam. I actually got admission. But then when I was, doing that exam and coming out of it, I felt like, no, this is not what I want to do as a career, because this is my safe place. I want to keep it safe and, go whenever I want to kind of go there. It's not something I want to do as a career. And I always loved inventing. The invention was not that I was kind of building Legos or breaking out things and making things out of it. It was more that I was inventing things for myself. So I was inventing how do I kind of figure out left and right? How do I figure out these and these? It was like every day I had to kind of figure out a trick to kind of navigate everything that I had to do in the world. And I thought maybe if I could, use that to do better for others, that would be different. It'll kind of be a game changer. And the reason, as you kind of rightly mentioned, the only reason I chose the engineering college, which I chose, was because it was close to my house. It was in 1 kilometer radius. And through the school and college, I had kind of created a system around me that I have to spend that extra hour to kind of read. I have to spend that extra hour to kind of color the formula. I had this whole colored math book. My math book was more colorful than my art book, actually. So I had all these things extra that I had to do, which I had to spend time. And if I had to spend time commuting, I wouldn't I would just be tired doing that. And that's how I, got into choosing engineering and then getting into that.
So really, now I hope you all are seeing this trend where there's this conflict, right? Like that we're seeing all these struggles, and yet these individuals who are talking about all the great stuff they've done, right? And so it makes you wonder, like, can you imagine a world without dyslexia? And really, dyslexia powers our life. Some of the major innovations in the world have been because of dyslexic mind. Thomas Edison for light, Albert Einstein, Alexander Graham Bell, when he invented the phone, one of the things he said is that soon there will be a time that will come when you can actually see the person who you're speaking with. And he was talking about video calling so many years ago, right? Like at that point, even broadband didn't exist. So think about, so that's the kind of power that dyslexic minds have, right? And they're often chided for this kind of stuff. So these are all tech innovators, the plane, the car, Steve Jobs, all of that. But also in medicine, you're seeing this, right? So Helen Brooke Tossig, she's the founder of pediatric cardiology. And kids in our country probably won't make it to medical school because of the judgments around their academics. So 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic. No surprise there, because they're just so smart about these things and innovative. These are all companies that were founded by dyslexia. So today, if you're used to watching 24-hour news, you can thank Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, who introduced this concept of 24-hour news. If you trade for stocks and your savings, then Charles Schwab, he brought everyday trading to the consumer. Furniture, IKEA, Virgin, of course. In recent times, the people who've gone to space, out of the 3 organizations, 2 were headed by dyslexic. We've all grown up with Mickey Mouse, so Walt Disney, and the list goes on. I can continue. This is just a snapshot of some of the popular names. So really, how does a mind that can't process language and do the basic stuff of what we think is equivalent to intelligence really make such an impact? That's because, like Sir Richard Branson says, dyslexia is what gives him the edge. It's the dyslexic thinking that, drives the imagination, creativity, and problem solving. So what is this dyslexic edge, right? It's visualizing, the ability to see beyond what we are seeing, being very innovative. It's part of their DNA to problem solve. It's basic everyday life and other stuff. They're great at communication. They break it down. They have to be clear because it's a coping mechanism, and they're very good. They're very logical, and the reasoning behind everything has to have a reason or a logic behind it. They're great at connecting dots that we don't even see exist, dots that we don't think can be connected to each other. Often say, "Arey, ye kya pagalpan hai? Not possible." And you tell a dyslexic and not possible, it'll actually happen. Problem solving, and then seeing the big picture. So top universities globally are tracking this. It's so common. It's almost 60% of MIT kids, Massachusetts Institute of Technology kids, are dyslexic. So it should give you a perspective of like what magic can happen if they're given the right support, right? So it's MIT, Yale, Brown, Stanford. In India, it's Ashoka, it's IIM Bangalore, So this is a reality, right? Everybody around us. So this is not something that it just looks good on slides or, sounds good. It's tough to start thinking about. So here, Carl, who talked to us about tech innovation.
I was a cheater in class, and I'll tell you why. Because in math class, for example, the teacher would put up the sum on the table, and I would work it out in my head and have the answer ready with me. And when she would ask me, or he would ask me to show the working, I wouldn't have it, right? So they always assumed I copied it from my peer sitting next to me. And then the peer said, "No, I got the wrong answer." So this guy's figured it out in some way or form. So, you went through that a few times because our brains just think differently, and we tend to understand what is being said before the other person is finished saying what they're saying. And that becomes very unnerving. I didn't know my ABCDs till the 5th grade, to be very honest. The only reason I could write my name was because there was another Kunal in my class. He wrote it, I memorized it, and I simply copied it. It was as simple as that. In the younger classes, I would sit at the back. So by the time the class finished reading the chapter twice, I had memorized it. So I would just pick up on where the person dropped off and, recite from my memory. My sister started a computer class in the 8th grade and I was in the 5th. And I got intrigued by the fact that, she was typing something on this electronic device and it was doing something magical on the screen. And I picked up on that. And I started sort of spending my breaks in the computer lab, bugging the teachers and the assistants to teach me what they were doing. By the time I hit my 7th grade, I was actually doing 10th grade level programming and college school projects, and that's what became my go-to thing as an out for my lack of success in academia. And the school encouraged it, my friends encouraged it, and that's when I decided right on my 8th grade to get a full-time job.
So really, so now that we're getting into the dyslexic thinking, E&Y did a study that mapped dyslexic thinking skills with the skills of the future as identified by the World Economic Forum. And it happens that it's really those are the skills that they struggle, that they're very good with, whether it's critical thinking, leadership, creativity, problem solving, those kind of things that they really excel with, which is why we encourage people to start hiring them to future-proof their businesses. And these are also the skills that are required as we move, right, post-pandemic into the key sort of professional jobs, the tech industry, gaming, animation. You're looking at, high-skilled work, which requires this sort of innovative thinking, jugaad, if I may also say. And it's so many of us, right? And so GCHQ is the UK government's cybersecurity sort of agency, and 60% of their, cyber spies are dyslexic. Microsoft recognizes that HSBC talks about how they are very critical to their organization. And so much so that LinkedIn, recently has added dyslexic thinking as one of the skills that you can put on your profile. So it's that much of an advantage that people can look at. So that, and this is really then impacts your business, right? And your bottom line. So SAP, for example, their program has led to 40 million savings in a company, which an individual that they were struggling with a client actually helped them solve because they were neurodiverse. And JP Morgan has 90 to 140% more productive than usual. E&Y has an interesting story that they saved over 3.5 million hours, $300 million, and created products that they didn't think could exist during the pandemic because they had to become so agile. They're also very dependable, right, because of their resilience. So they are very, very dependable. They have a very low attrition rate. These are all things that we struggle with as employers. So what can we learn from global leaders? E&Y's Neurodiversity Center was started in 2016. They focus on 3 pillars: the hiring bit, how do you ensure that more people enter the workforce; the culture, how do you sort of not just hire and tick mark and say, okay, I have these 4 people, they sit in one corner and twiddle their thumbs, but actually bring them in to your core teams and work with them. And then they also work with the ecosystem to support them. They have a lot of resources and talent management.
We've hired individuals that were driving an Uber or an Ola, delivering pizzas, working as a cleaner or a janitor. All of these jobs are honorable, hardworking jobs with dignity. Except if the focus of the individual and capability, for example, the individual who was delivering pizzas, 3 weeks after starting at EY, he was writing artificial intelligence machine learning algorithms for EY's artificial intelligence lab. If you think about the disparity of that individual who had applied to more than 500 different positions, has a data science background, and could not get a second interview because of the corporate structure of how interviews are being done, he did not perform well in interviews. But if you gave him a performance-based test and allowed his creativity to come out, you often found that thinking differently is a key strength. And I would say, last but not least, that individual and the 250.
Apologies. So really, he stressed on the key points, right? How are we recruiting? Are there inbuilt biases that sort of work against us? HP, Bill Hewitt founded, HP. He had severe dyslexia. But again, their programs that they run concentrate on hiring and culture. It's very, very critical that you have your managers and teams ready to accept these individuals within their teams and work with their strengths and accept their struggles, really. So what can you do that's there? Start thinking about, and our panel, I think, will discuss some of this, is start talking about the new hires. How are you going to get more talent in it? So like Hiren mentioned, you want to look at your interviewing processes, your recruitment processes. How do you onboard internships, right? Like in interviews, if a person is moving, are you penalizing them for it? Or you understand that this person might require this to be able to, or is not making eye contact, so those kind of things that you want to look at. Then there's a large chunk of undiagnosed employees. These are often underemployed. And if you actually give them the accommodations they require, they will perform much, much better. You have a chunk of diagnosed employees who may not be comfortable revealing to you that they have this condition because they may think that it's a stigma and they may not be up for, promotions and things like that. And then the other large section is caretakers, the caregivers, really, the individuals who have a parent, a partner, a child who's dyslexic who needs to be supported. This is one of the primary reasons women may be dropping out of the workforce. I, as a mother, know that, it's a big struggle when my child requires a scribe to write their exams for them. When I have to take off from work, it can be a challenge. How do you balance that bit, right? There's a large expense associated with these things. So are we thinking about those kind of things where you can have the support systems within our organizations for caregivers? So really the emerging best practices, if I were to summarize, is the hiring. Relook at the way you're doing job profiles. Do you need to go to the top schools upfront? Are grades really what you require, or the skills? Are you checking on the skill mapping before you're sort of looking at the grades and academic performance? Do you really need somebody who's fluent in writing in every job position that you require? Things like that. Can you look at those profiles? Can you modify hiring processes? If you require a written test, are you giving them the accommodation of extra time? Things like that. How do you emphasize on onboarding and the transition? It may be very overwhelming, things like that. Internship opportunities. There are, universities across the country and the world are encouraging these students to look at on-campus recruitment to hire them. Partnerships. There are a lot of organizations in the field, including a partner of ours, Vishesh, who actually help in the hiring. So that's one bit. The other bit is the culture of inclusion, and I can't stress on this enough. Making assistive technologies available to them. Half of it is already inbuilt. Dictation tools, allowing now noise cancelling, headphones, spell check, allowing you to record meetings so that they don't have to take notes. Those kind of things are really, really very helpful to integrate. Sensitizing people at all levels, because while it's great for the individual to come in, a manager must be ready to have an employee who says, you know what, I need to step out of this meeting, regroup and come back. So, how do you sensitize these individuals, create those arrangements, maybe flexible work arrangements may be required, things like that. Infrastructure, can we provide destimulation rooms? These are really rooms that are silent, where somebody can go in and sort of regroup. Like I mentioned, overstimulation is a challenge. Flexible preferential seating, training on assistive technologies, things like that, if we want to look at. And then professional development. What we are seeing in a lot of programs is people do the check marks, but don't integrate, and then they don't have real career pathways. These individuals may not be as ambitious and really need that mentorship to sort of plan their goods, like buddies, to navigate through space. So suggested next steps, where can you start? Sensitize decision makers and senior leadership within your organizations on the value of these people. The next is, of course, develop a holistic inclusion that is embedded not just in your D&I agenda, right? This is about growth and innovation. Ultimately, these are the minds that are doing that problem solving, creating those innovative solutions to drive profitability, and we're seeing a lot of them. Consciously build a culture of inclusion. This is very critical, both for the mental health of the individual you're bringing in and the existing team. Build organizational capacity to implement these programs. And then it's a constantly learning process, right? Like no two dyslexics look the same or are seen the same. So that's something that we sort of need to look at. So these are our next steps. And with this, I would just like to end on the note that don't miss out on the genius of the next. Henry Ford, Richard Branson, Bill Hewitt. I don't know who it might be next, right? And with that, I would end, and I'm happy to take any questions that have been brought up.
Thank you, Nupur. It was really insightful. And honestly speaking, I mean, we were just chatting within my team. I thought, I think a couple of them are partially dyslexic. I can even feel that the kind of traits you were talking about it, and of course the kind of heights those people have reached on. We were aware of a couple of them, but not so many of them. I mean, you talk about any field, and the person has already made a mark, and it's a live example which is available. So thank you, Nupur, and it was a very good, insightful presentation for me, and I'm sure that would have been for the audience as well. And like we mentioned in the starting, this is just not the one of the things. We would continue keep on working in this area with you. We'll see, as you mentioned, that this area requires more of awareness. Of course, we understand that. And more importantly, to get the future skills ready, what kind of changes the management needs to take into consideration from an organization perspective. So all those things are really, really important. You have already mentioned in your presentation, well covered with examples. And of course, the people who are working in various domains with their testimonies and everything. So thank you for getting us that with us, and we would definitely take up the questions post the panel discussion. We'll now straight away move on to the panel discussion, where we have the experience sharing, basically the successful models of inclusion from the industry. So we have the seasoned speakers from the industry who have joined us today to have a discussion on the subject. The panelists for the session are Mr. Virat Bhatia, Chairman for Mobile Manufacturing and Communications Committee, FICCI, Ms. Neha Satish, Lead CSR and DNI, Thomson Reuters India, and session is being moderated by Ms. Chandana Singh, Founder and Consultant Advocacy for Dyslexia. While I leave to Chandana to introduce the panelists in detail, a few words about Chandana from my side. As I mentioned, she has founded the Advocacy for Dyslexia, a consultancy focused on working with students, parents, education institutes, and corporates to create awareness, empower, and support individuals with special learning needs. She's also the founder of the Office of Learning Support at Ashoka University. She's a parent advocate who, over the last 2 decades, has worked directly with numerous neurodiverse children and adults, supporting their inclusion and enabling them to realize their full potential. She's worked as a special educator and legal advisor at Home Creation Trust, which is an NGO working with people with various disabilities. And of course, there are many more things which can be added for Chandana, but here, of course, as a moderator, Chandana, we look forward to a really good panel discussion with the very, very experienced speakers you have with you right now. So over to you, Chandana.
Thank you so much, Nupur, and Sarika and Nupur both. And Sarika, thank you for that very warm introduction. That was really an insightful and a wonderful session by Nupur, as always. And while, I think theoretically we have sort of discussed everything, we have this wonderful panel here with Mr. Virat Bhatia and Ms. Neha Satish, who are both in their own way implementing and have implemented a lot of that to the corporate industry. Let me quickly introduce them, and we can then begin straight away. Ms. Neha Satish, she is the lead CSR and DNI at Thomson Reuters India. She heads the CSR and DNI for India at Thomson Reuters and is based out of Bangalore. She started her career with corporates, transitioned to non-profits, and is now back in the corporate world, but has always worked in the space of social work, diversity, and inclusion. In her current role at Thomson Reuters, she partners with businesses across India operations to support them in their endeavor to build a diverse workforce. Her current flagship programs she is focused on are Project Pride, hiring first-generation learners, and ASD internship program. She's committed to having uncomfortable dialogues in her organization. She questions the norms and helps create a more equitable workplace where everyone can bring their whole selves to work. Thank you so much, Neha, for joining the panel. So Neha actually is part of, an organization where she is actively working at including students and our workforce with SLDs into the corporate space and sort of making the corporate space more inclusive. Hi, Virat. Welcome to the panel. Mr. Virat Bhatia is the Chairman, Mobile Manufacturing and Communications at FICCI. He is the Managing Director, Apple India, and is responsible for supporting investment strategy and policy across Apple's business operations in India. These include manufacturing, retail, app store, maps, content, services, and digital payments. Virat's career in ICT sector spans 25 years. Before Apple, he was the chairman of AT&T in India, and later as AT&T's regional president for South Asia. He's also held marketing roles in the Hyatt Hotels and Coca-Cola. Importantly, Virat is currently serving on FICCI's National Executive Committee, and he chairs the FICCI National Committee on Mobile Manufacturing and Communications. He serves as the president of Public Affairs Forum, also on the India Executive Leadership Board of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Virat is an alumni of the Delhi University and John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He's completed advanced management programs at Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University, Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. Wow. So, well, as Virat will start and share his story with you, Virat actually is himself someone who's been through the whole SLD profile in his childhood and has actually reached, this point in the corporate sector. So it's really interesting, but from what Nupur said, sometimes I think that when you have dyslexia or any learning need, maybe because you're not focusing so much on the mundane, because your brain is kind of thinking differently, that you actually focus on the exceptional. And I think that is what gives you the edge. That is what gives you the creativity, the talent to think out of the box. Because you're constantly thinking, how better can you express yourself? I can't express myself by doing tables correctly. I can't express myself by, spelling correctly. I can't express myself by reading fast. I might need some tools for that. So how do I express myself? And then this whole explosion of talent, which comes through. And I think it's just fabulous that we are having this dialogue here and with FICCI and Changing in Partnership, because we really need to harness this pool of talent. It is something which every organization can really benefit from. So let me start off straight away with Virat. Virat, my first question to you. As a senior industry leader who's himself been through this, field of specific learning disabilities, I want to ask you, what has it actually taken to build a career like yours? Because I think that's what many would aspire for. What do you think has been the key to your professional success? I mean, you can, tell us about your journey and how you actually led to this point here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Nupur. Hi, Neha. Thank you for having me, Channa. I'll sort of try and jump into the answers. So as a dyslexic who didn't know that he was dyslexic for I think about, I'd say almost 35 to 40 years of my first, I'm plus 50 now. I didn't know this till about 10 years ago, or I'll say 12 years ago, that I had this problem. I actually discovered it when I tested my daughter, who also has it, and then I saw the symptoms and understood and sort of understood about it. So I went through very quickly on the journey first. I went to school in a very unusual situation, which is I'd be somebody who'd be doing debates for the school. I'd be doing Shakespeare and Othello, and then scoring, barely pass marks in biology. So the school was completely confused about this dichotomy, as it were. So the most often written remark on my copies across till class 12th was "can do better," because the teachers would constantly say, "Yeah, this is not possible that you can be, in the class completely answering everything, put your hand up for everything." and you'd be out in sort of in games and sports and dramatics and debate, but you can't write a paper. Obviously, you don't focus. Obviously, you're careless. Right? There's no connection between these two personalities. So that, and there was no discovery till I passed school that I had dyslexia. It was not known. I passed out in school 84. I don't think this was, this disability was that well established at that time, certainly not in India. And I passed out college in 87, so you can imagine that. What I did have as a saving grace for me was I was multi-talented. So I was, good at sports, really good at sports, good at dramatics, good at extracurricular. So they didn't have the ability, the peer pressure that comes along with the rough treatment that you get as somebody who's not scoring in exams was removed in my case because I was excelling everywhere else. So in that sense, I was, the favorite of the teachers and young ladies who thought that, sports mein theek hai, to theek hi hoga, right? So, and English bhi theek bolta hai and dramatics bhi theek the. And I went to a nunnery, and so, my sort of, I was taught on the caning on how to speak, straightforward English without getting into. I remember being shouted at once because I used the word "ya" instead of "yes" in class 7. So back then, that was the norm of correct English. So what came to my rescue was multi-talent. But what it means in the modern day, because it's important for now to understand, is that you need to take a student of dyslexia, because now in this discovery, you know that it is to find out what is it that their mind is good at. And then give them safe passage around that piece and build their confidence around that one, because they would be scoring. Having said that, in my daughter's case, I can tell you that without a scribe, she scores 65. With the scribe, she goes to 97.
Wow.
The gap is not 10%. The gap is 30% marks. And she took a scribe against our wishes and by hiding from us, because the school offered a scribe. She thought she couldn't write. She asked for us. Suddenly she was scoring 60. We were okay. She was in class 7. She came back one day with 93%. So we thought cheating came, 100% cheating came. Right? So we went through, and then she revealed she took a scribe. So we went back to school saying, why are you giving her a scribe? They said she deserves a scribe. And now she has a scribe and all that, and sort of she went to the merit list in class 10. So I'm giving you my personal experience on one who didn't have it, somebody who has help, and then how you could really focus. So in terms of what it takes to succeed is focus on the big successes and try and work only on the fatal flaws. Don't work on all the flaws. Indian parents के साथ क्या है कि अगर आप 95% marks भी ले आए 5 subjects में, तो वो पूछेंगे हिंदी में कितने आए? हिंदी में तो 60 है ना आपके, तो उस पे डांट पड़ती है. तो वो डिफिकल्टी है, और हिंदी आपके काम नहीं आएगी अगर आपने हिंदी का न्यूज़लेटर नहीं पढ़ना, तो वो it will be relatively that use only. So what we need to do is that for dyslexic children, we need to focus on. That's one big learning. The second one, I'd say, is once you can identify the area of interest, be really highlighted. I'll tell you in mine and I'll finish this one. I discovered fairly early that if I had a set of slides and I was presenting, I would be better than most. Because I write slides with graphics and description for a dyslexia, which means when you read it, it becomes incredibly easy if you are normal. I mean, you're all normal, but somebody who doesn't have the disability. So it is so easy that actually everybody is watching it, thinks, and I'm just trying to make it easy for myself, actually. That's all I'm doing. So I go to pictorials, I go to graphics, I go to pie charts, so my text is always limited. As a rule, I never take a bullet point into second line. I never put more than 7 bullet points on a slide because it's too cluttered for me. But what it ends up is, makes for a really good presentation. So the people are thinking, what a good presentation. All I've done is made it easy for myself. So I'm just giving you a small example on how your mind works to make something very easy and simple that comes into your. So long story short, find the areas in which your mind works well. Parents and teachers have to help focus on that. Keep the confidence up. give them a safe passage. Not every child will be multi-talented, so you'll have to protect them from the peer pressure and the sort of and the negativities that come along with it. In a school environment, it's quite rough. And bring them to workplace. Take them to school, college safely. Bring them to workplace, because that's where they'll blossom.
Yeah, I know. So I think there's this quote of yours which I have been using, which you actually haven't said today, but you said it in those many words, which is that if you can get them with their confidence intact from school and college and get them to reach the workforce, then you've basically accomplished a lot. Because if confidence breaks along the way, then it becomes very difficult to salvage that. So you had said that in an earlier panel, and I think you've summed that up today towards the end.
Take them to the workplace with a safe passage and focus on the area that they're interested. That is really
lovely. Thank you. So I guess that is the lesson that, you know, we sort of support them with various assistive technology concessions in school. We need to get them, you know, places to study at higher education and ensure that they have support over there. And then, you know, we need to get to a place where we are looking for jobs. So Neha, welcome to the panel. I wanted to ask you, as someone, you know, who's been very instrumental in driving this inclusion agenda at your organization now, Thomson Reuters, what really has been your approach in integrating our neurodiverse, you know, workforce into your organization, and what have been your learnings in the process? And, you know, in terms at the organizational level, what is it that you find practically implementing this strategy?
Sure, thanks. So at Thomson Reuters, we are really trying to create opportunities for all at the table. And inclusion is a continuous effort. And to build that into the mindset of every colleague is a slow process, but we are aiming to build a sustainable process at it, right? So before bringing in neurodiverse talent, it is sort of very important that there is enough awareness in the current existing system. Like Mr. Viraj said, bring them to the workplace, bring them to the safe space, and then this is where they truly shine. I completely agree with that. But there's also, when we talk about the workplace, it's not just the person and the talent. There's like a peer, there's like a reporting system, there's a manager, and there's this whole group of people who are together, right? So it's really important that that whole ecosystem also has an understanding. So we were really focused on building awareness, sensitization, and bringing in that right mindset. So our focus was on driving home the point that missteps may happen, but it paves way to innovation, something that Nupur was also talking about. So most innovation, groundbreaking discoveries happen when there is diversity in thought process, and that is exactly what cognitively diverse persons bring to the table. So our approach was to help the teams, leads and leaders, see this and understand the business case. So once this was done, we were all set. And I must say that we are still in the learning journey, but surely able to see the benefits already. With some of the interactions, we've already seen some groundbreaking work coming across. So that's sort of been our journey and how we set the pace for the whole inclusion dialogue at DR when it comes to neurodiversity.
So Anita, just taking from there, could you just elaborate a little bit on, you know, how, how you sort of prepare the workforce, you know, where the neurodiverse, you know, when you have to work together in a group? I think the workforce, like we said, needs to be prepared. Is it more about allyship? Is it about, again, you know, making the peers sort of more aware? And also that once you're able to, add in these individuals into the workforce, how does it go on from there? Are they, you know, the whole coping mechanism and strategy at a personal level and at the organization level?
Of course. So before I speak more about preparing the workforce, I think when it comes to working styles, it's not just neurodiverse people, right? Even the neurotypicals have different working styles, different communication styles. So as practice, what we started to do is when we're working on a new project, we have like a 2-day launch event. Not for all projects, sometimes it's very fast paced, you don't have the time, the luxury to do that. But in most cases, we have those conversations. So for example, when it comes to me, I don't check WhatsApp and calls. In fact, if I get a phone call, it's very difficult. I almost never pick calls. It's something I'm trying to work on, but it's very difficult for me. But I'm really responsive on emails. And that has been my strength. And I've not been diagnosed as being on the spectrum, but these kind of traits you will find in all neurotypicals as well. So that has been something that we're bringing in, like for the team to understand how each other works. What's the best way of communicating to one another? What are the sensory sensitivities that one might have? So that's a conversation that we've been having across teams, right? And now coming to the portion where we're talking about preparing the workforce, no doubt it is very important. And we focused on that before rolling out the whole neurodiversity internship program that we've been running since 2020. So there were sensitization workshops which were hosted for colleagues in small batches to help them understand neurodiversity, including autism and learning disabilities, which we touched upon, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and the likes. Creating awareness about cognitive diversity was the first step. Right, we were cognizant of the fact that not many people even knew what these things meant.
Absolutely.
Right? And which is why a lot of kids end up getting bullied because they're just not understood and they don't have the awareness of, there is a different way of looking at the world and just your way of looking, you can't say that's the right way. So creating that awareness was our first step. And this was done with the help of a lot of case style examples so that employees or teams could comprehend the challenges that a neurodiverse person faces in a neurotypical world. And these trainings and workshops were very well received, and we had so many positive comments coming from colleagues. And we also had this one session where each person would share about their sensitivity. Some people would say that, I don't work well. If there's a meeting of like more than 10 people, I get really overwhelmed if more than one person is talking at a time. When somebody's too loud, somebody's voice is too shrill. These are things that we started openly discussing. These might sound very tiny, not important things, but these do affect the performance of someone with cognitive who are cognitively diverse, right? So these were some things that we've been doing and we're still learning. We've constantly been changing our sensitization methods. We've been including more and more cases into a conversation with teams and small sized sensitization workshops. So these are some of the things that we've been doing and we continue to do as we learn.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I think this thing of this workshop in smaller groups is something which can really make a difference, to sensitization. So, Virat, I wanted to, get your views now in your, role as a part of an organization. How easy do you think is it for corporate organizations to, include, neurodiverse hiring as a part of their agenda? And when you're actually looking at, hiring candidates, is it, how does the role of the higher education institutions fit in with regard to that? What is it? Because sometimes conversations, there is this whole focus on diversity now, but a lot of it is, just gender diversity or, how hard is it for organizations to take it to what we are discussing today, Virat?
So I wouldn't talk about the company that I work for now or any other company in particular, but in general, my comment is that it is challenging. It's not that easy because, it's slightly better than school, but people tend to still treat, everybody is the same as they are. They think that they will, why is this situation? Why are they here? What is going on? Because, we have such a rich pool of talent supply that why are we having to struggle with this person? Why can't we get somebody we don't have to struggle with? So I can, I can understand that. So I think the more you can sensitize people, like was just said by Neha, that is certainly going to be helpful. And the HR teams and everybody has a very sort of important work cut out for themselves. And leadership as well has to kind of put their weight behind it, because it's an extra effort that you have to make, which is to say, if there is a speed limit, just because you can drive at 100, you can't. You have to drive at 40. There is a speed limit. You can't do what you want. It's what is required to be done, right? So we have to discipline ourselves and understand that inclusivity requires effort, requires discipline, and there is a need for it. It changes a lot if you have somebody in the family or somebody your sensitivity increases a lot, but that doesn't always happen. So I think that kind of I've seen that eases. For example, if you're a person who has a working wife and daughters who are working, your attitude to working women is very different from people who are not. Not that they don't have a good attitude, but you're just trained with that sensitivity, right? So that certainly helps. We shouldn't discount the importance of that. The part I'd say that would still work at workplaces is the ability to focus on whether this person has the talents that you require for the role they have to do. And if you can fit them into that role by picking that spot, which means a more intense interview process, a better fitment process, then the chances are that the person will succeed better than they will not. For example, if long form reading is an issue and you want to be a lawyer, then you want to be slightly careful. But if that is not an issue, so don't place them in a place where they're up against additional odds. Give them a role, and they need to also. Similarly, with people with this limitation, must pick spaces where their chances of success are. So there is unka bhi daitva banta hai, it's their responsibility as well to not sort of have this I want to do the toughest thing. Now you may be able to succeed, and some people do. I have a 17-year-old who, as I said, topped in 10th and then dropped all the subjects in which she topped to say, I want to take 4 different subjects because mera interest usme hai, which means she has to work much harder. And her marks dropped in class 11 because it's all new subjects. But that's what she wanted to do. So some people will want to do that. You'll have to support them. You'll have to work with them on that. So I think a lot of patience, adjustment, sensitivity is required in the companies to go through. And not all companies will be at the same level. But I think they're all coming along. My request to our peers would be to take the time to understand better fitment. Because if fitment can be fine, then I think they will excel. They might need some additional accommodation, even at work. If we can provide that, we should do that. I think those are the small things that are really critical to make this work.
Thank you. That was wonderful and very well summed up. Neha, anything that you'd like to sort of add as a part of our concluding remark, or anything that you think organizations should be sensitive to and how they could hire more such talent?
Yes, so first and foremost, I'd like to share that persons with dyslexia are not talent starved, right? And contrary to popular misconception, this talent can be easily brought into mainstream workplaces with basic support. And like Virat said, there are challenges, there are practical challenges, but we are all inching. And there's so much that organizations and the HR teams and the support functions can do to sort of help everyone, give everyone those guardrails to function alongside. So that said, I understand that there is a lot of inhibition to kickstart something like this in organizations as well. So my advice in some sense would be to start small, maybe think of an internship program, test the waters, roll out, don't roll out or go wide in for short, do it in small batches, run a pilot. It will give you that much needed confidence. Also, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's the best thing about this day and age. There are several organizations who have embraced this. So you can refer to some of their models, then tweak it to best suit your org culture and working styles. And the amount of support available is also immense. There are organizations like FICCI who can help make these introductions. There are so many brilliant nonprofits working in this space who can act as SMEs and support through your journey. Invest in training your recruiters. This is very important to build the capability to identify right talent. Like Virat said, job fitment, understanding that is really key, because if you match the right person to the right job, then there's, the battle is half won. And to give that positive candidate experience is also very important. So, and instill an inclusive hiring practices. So investing in this skill will really help you in the long run, as it anyway needs to be built into the fabric of the hiring process, as that builds your brand. And it really is a win-win situation. So if you want to do the right fitment, do the right job analysis, it's really important that you build these capabilities within the recruitment team. Who is front-ending your brand? Who is the first person who's interacting with any potential talent?
And like you're saying, sorry, yeah, Virat, carry on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, like she's saying, training the hirers, training the workforce really becomes of crucial importance. Virat, what were you saying?
I was saying that, remember, let's say there are 10 parameters on which you want to judge somebody for a role, right? And it's likely that the person with dyslexia is at 7 on 5, 6 of them, and the other person is on 7. There'll be 2 on which they'll be on 10. Now, if you get your act together and you know that ye 2 jo hain, isme they will just score a century every time they step out to bat, then you've really got yourself a Sachin Tendulkar there for yourself. But agar aap usse bowling karayenge, to chances are ki wo wicket nahi le sakta. So this is the trick that you need to understand. Now, I am just fortunate, I have to say that. But as I said, because of I escaped school humiliation, because of multi-talent, cricket, sports, Angrezi, all that. And then when you get to work, I just picked spaces that I could work. But I have to tell you, I have taken a salary cut to take a role that I've always wanted. In my entire life, I wanted to do that. And I was terrible. In 6 months, I left. If I didn't, they would sack me. But I was okay to leave and go somewhere else. And it was an adjacent profession. So I was a disaster in that space. And then in the adjacent profession, which is taught in schools and colleges in the same class, I was likely amongst the best in the country at the age of 22. So imagine being a disaster and being recognized as the best, both in an adjacent profession within the space of that time at which. So if you got the wrong one, so it can go horribly wrong. So we have to be very careful. And people with dyslexia also have to be brave and courageous. They have to work harder. They have to make tougher decisions. They have to be transparent about saying ki ye challenge hai. Like if you send me a really long mail, I struggle to send back a mail because I have to type. And often there'll be mistakes, spelling mistakes honge. Up to I can do spelling checks and all that stuff. So when you get a mail back from somebody who has dyslexia, be patient about the fact that unke spelling mistakes honge. Off missing hoga, and missing hoga, the missing hoga, ek capital word nahi hoga. But you need to be tolerant. But the switch side is, if you said to me, Virat, let's go to Bombay, I'm already in Bombay. My mind is, because auditory, so I'm now in Nariman Point, right? Because the imagination is gone there already.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how it works. Then uske baad, everything you talk about Bombay, now I'm in Bombay. My mind is moving in. So that's how the mind works. It's not in Delhi anymore. It's in Bombay, Mumbai. Yeah. Right. So all I'm saying is that so you'll have to, that's really important. Ki wo jo do mein wo 10 on 10 hai, if you put them in that, they'll be a massive asset. So don't drag them through stuff that they'll be average at. Pick the one that they're good at, and then you have a real winner at your hands.
And like you said, we've added one more virtue to dyslexic here, which is the risk-taking ability. And then that strength and resilience, which I have seen even with my son, who's actually dyslexic, and which is how I'm primarily a parent advocate. that risk-taking ability, they have to prove themselves over there, and there is this immense determination to succeed, and they actually do. So I think we need to reach a space where, organizations, while the challenges are there, organizations have to understand and appreciate genuinely, like we say, na, dil se ye samajhna chahiye, dil se samajhna chahiye कि ये आपकी organization को benefit करेंगे. I mean, the way the empathy that they have, they will be great leaders, the problem solving skills that they have, the determination that they have. Sometimes they have been through such a journey of struggle that, they are all out there to sort of, make a success of themselves. So just give them the right opportunity and see the results that they bring. I mean, go over the fact that, there are 3 spelling errors in the email. That really does not matter in the larger scheme of things. I think that's what we are saying. Nupur, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just want to add, I think this is great conversation, but I think we also need to start listening to what they want. So we have a couple of people in my team who are dyslexic and are neurodiverse, and they all have different needs, right? So I have one person who said, can you just get me a Grammarly account, right? Like, it helps me figure out the tone of of the documents I'm writing, because I can't figure it out myself. And then I have another person who says, let me sort of, when we do meetings, like we use Teams, can you please allow me to record and do transcription, because I'm not good at taking the notes. So when the transcription is on, it's free. She doesn't have to worry about the note taking herself. It's like somebody else is offsetting the task that she struggles with, but then she applies her mind and creates these lovely things, right? I think that's one thing. And also, as a manager, you have to have that acumen to see when your person may be getting burnt out, right? Like, you've given them 10 tasks and they are so eager to impress you and say they'll succeed, that they don't want to let them, that they are struggling, and have that nuance and say that, okay, you know what, I'm going to take this off your plate for now. We'll concentrate on these things and then we'll succeed in the rest, without that judgment call that, oh my God, you're a failure and, you're dragging the team back. Absolutely. When you create that environment, and as an organization, the other thing we've done is we play to each other's strengths, right? Like, we figured out as a team that this person is great at note taking, this one makes the presentations, this one does the strategy, and we sort of bounce each other. So even though you're in verticals and doing your stuff, it's very cross-sectional where people don't feel threatened. And I think if you can achieve some of that, the struggles become easier and everybody sort of improves, right? So I would just lay that on the table, and that doesn't take money to do. It just takes commitment as humans to be able to do it, like for organizations, sort of. And I think managers, seniors, and HR heads can sort of lay that foundation. So I just wanted to add that.
May I also add on the word of that you said about determination about your son, and then I think Nupur just said that we need to be flexible. I just want to be careful that even dyslexic, being determined is one thing, but please don't drag them through something that's not working.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You should have the ability to take them out when it becomes clear that ye nahi kaam kar raha. They should have the ability to walk away saying this is not working. So don't do it. Okay, I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to do this. You might be brilliant somewhere else, right? Don't. If you're a crocodile, you can't climb a tree.
Yeah,
a squirrel can, right? So just make sure that after you've given it your best, if it doesn't, shift fields, move roles, because it's 30-35 years. हम लोग काम करते हैं, 40 साल भी काम करते हैं, 40 years. It's a long time, and we spend with our colleagues 9 to 10 hours a day. At home, we spend an hour and a half with the family in the morning and an hour in the evening. So we spend a lot of time at work. So please pick the right ones. Please have the courage, have the determination to follow and work hard and prove yourself, but also have the courage to shift when you have to. Don't get dogmatic about it, because some things not everybody will be good. The thing is, this is also good for people who don't have any issue. But उनका difficulty है कि उन्होंने तो वहाँ मर मिटना है. तो आपको ऐसी कोई जरूरत नहीं है. आप please कुछ और देख लें, और you can do very well there. So as I said, I'm a living example of someone took a salary cut to join something that I wanted all my life, and everybody thought, and I thought I'd be brilliant. Complete disaster. And then shift to an adjacent field, just adjacent. So I went to advertising, and I named the field. Disaster. Come to CopCom, And they said, "You are the best we brought." And these are courses that are taught together in universities, and the same. Everything is the same, right? It's almost the same professors, same course material. You think advertising in Copcom is same? There's no difference. It is very much the same. It's about communicating. But here is the minor difference. It didn't work for me in one. It worked completely well for the other. And I think in part the reason was in advertising, the environment was a rough environment. It was like, it's their way. If you don't fit in, it's not good enough. In the Copcom business, it was different. They gave me some space and then I could take it. So I'm always happy to put myself out there to tell people that, please don't handcuff yourself to someone out of determination alone.
No, that's wonderful, Virat. I think that's just actually a very, very beautiful and brilliant point. And thank you for sharing that from your personal story, because that is important. And sometimes actually what happens is that with the dyslexics, there is more of that you want to prove yourself, and if that doesn't happen, then you kind of view yourself as having failed, in that format.
That's so unfair.
It is really a beautiful point that you brought out in that while you give in your best, but it's actually brave to make a change and to shift to something else where you might just shine then totally.
No, it's a 40 years work life.
Wow.
40, 35 years. It's not working, you can see it now. Look for something different. 35 is a long time to be at workplace.
Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, should we? Nupur, I think we are sort of running out of time. So maybe we look at the questions.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Go ahead.
Nupur is just telling us that we need to look at the questions, take up the questions from the chat box. But I just, so to end the discussion, I just want to say that, I was with a group doing a session with robotics. And there were actually, five of us working together, one of whom had dyslexia. And the dyslexic, so 4 of us spent about half an hour trying to sort this thing together, and we were not able to do it and getting frustrated. And the 5th, who happened to be a dyslexic, maybe just by chance walked in, took about 10 seconds and said, "Oh my God, but this has to go there. What are you doing?" And, this is an honest, genuine example. And we were like, but what were we doing and how did you see this? We never saw this. So it's a hugely different talent pool. I mean, really, let's not discount it. And I guess sessions like this is what, what really lead to that awareness.
And parents and teachers have a very big role, very, very, very big role to get you there. Like I said, in that sense, I'm not a role model. I was very fortunate to have many different strengths. But jinke nahi hote na, they need that assistance to get through the college and then workplace. We need to do that. That's vast majority of the population.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm taking the first question. This is that since I'm from the tech community, I would like to know if there is a tech-based solution which organizations can leverage to nurture a dyslexic individual. Neha, would you be able to take this?
So we've not been using any tech-based solutions. What has helped is people with dyslexia and dyscalculia through their learning, like from school and college, have figured out or innovated, made solutions for themselves. So they already come with solutions. There's nothing that the workplace had to do to teach. So all of our trainings, etc., has always been for neurotypicals. For people on the spectrum of a neurodiversity, they already know what the challenges are. They know how best to work with them. They give out solutions. Like if this is how I respond to this situation, this is something you could do to make it a bit more easier. So we've not had to invest in technology as such to help folks. Of course, with people with locomotor disabilities or any other disabilities, then of course we have, but not in this case. So maybe I have limited experience here. Maybe Nupur or someone else would know better.
Okay, so Nupur, I'm going to give you the second question as well, and then you can answer a part of the tech and this together. So this is that, are there any initiatives by the government of India to support dyslexic people in general? So if you could take this and add on anything about the tech, the first question that you want. Nupur?
Thanks, Chandana. So for tech-based solutions, actually most platforms now come with inbuilt solutions for free, things like dictation tools, alarm clocks, organizers, spell check, Grammarly, those kind of things are great tech solutions for individuals with dyslexia and other learning disabilities to use. A calculator is one of the best tools for somebody with dyscalculia who probably is having difficulty doing basic calculations but understands concepts. Excel sheets work very well for them as well. It's really about leveraging those things and allowing the use of it. So it's not just saying that, they can use dictation, but not allowing the recording of a meeting, for example. So those kind of things need to be, and how you implement it. A lot of times you require, like an alarm clock works when you're doing meetings or time tasks, and allowing somebody to use their phone to put it and say, okay, 15 minutes is up, those kind of things. In terms of Government of India, there's tremendous work happening. The RPWD Act actually has laid the foundation for recognizing this as a disability. The new education policy of 2020 is actually one of the most progressive in terms of the inclusion for individuals with specific learning disabilities at all levels. More recently, the AICTE, which regulates technical education in our country, and the UGC, which regulates liberal arts and central universities, they have come out with guidelines of accommodations in the classroom. There is support to give entrance exams to get into higher education. There's a lot of support on campus in terms of they're beginning to start building capacity of professors and others to improve. We have a very strong progressive policy environment that we are in. The question is the implementation and awareness around it in sessions like this, I'm hoping will help. Also for individuals to start demanding it now, because now JEE, NEET, all of them provide, CBSE, most state boards provide for these accommodations. So start talking and figuring out how to use them. So those kind of things are happening in the government.
Lovely. So the next question, and I don't know who's actually best placed to handle this, but it says, can you please share some global best practices at the organization level on employee empowerment with dyslexia? Neha, would you?
I can take a shot.
Say with confidence. So what are the global best practices that you're following?
Yes, so one basic thing is having an employee resource group. That has really been, a lot of employees have said that they felt more empowered with that. So we have a generic employee resource group called, it's called DEN, Disabilities Employee Network. And within that, there are several subgroups. There are people who are on the autism spectrum who are part of it. There are people with learning disabilities, with dyslexia, with ADHD, forming their own groups. So that has been very helpful. So these groups get together, they discuss the common challenges that they face, also talk about the tech innovations that's come in this space, and what are the modes and methods that they can use, and what are the things that the organization can do to support them better. So there are these discussions happening in small groups, which then get presented to a DNI lead or the HR team. And then there are further discussions. So what we've done is, it's not like a top-down approach. Let the community say what are the things that they need. And then it's like an assessment that the team does to sort of understand, okay, are these things that we can support? What more can we do? What are the reasonable accommodations that can be and should be made? So that's one practice, I think, and I've noticed that in other organizations also, that has really helped. After running some of these programs, we've realized that we have senior leaders who are on the spectrum who got diagnosed so late.
Yeah.
Always felt there's something, they felt like there's something missing, or unfortunately, some of them call themselves weird when we had the discussions, and then now understood that they've been on the spectrum, or they have some learning challenges. So having these sponsorship from senior leaders has also been like a game changer. When there's a senior leader, there's a constant push. They're always encouraging teams and leaders and managers to do their best. So I think this could be something like some of the best practices that I could really share that we witnessed. Running small pilot programs has been a game changer as well.
Okay, and I think the next question also sort of you can take, because it's actually a really huge topic. I don't know if it applies only to specific learning disabilities or general. It says that the question is, as HR, how do you manage the stress levels in an employee with specific learning disabilities? Now, I think this is actually twofold, because I think generally stress levels and anxiety is high. But it is a very well-known fact that, when you have a specific learning disability, because of the challenges that you go through, anxiety does go hand in hand. So as an organization, anything that you can shed light on this, management or whatever you've seen?
Absolutely. So one thing is, an HR might not be qualified to handle these conversations, but so that's something that we have that is told to the whole workforce, right? HR will not be a one-stop shop, but there are certain skills that HR is also trained on to sort of help here. So in this particular case, if a manager of the team flags some issues like the stress levels and, which is inducing a lot of problems, HR is trained to identify these things, to identify the stress levels and understand if this is where this person fits, then this is the right person to help. Like it could be an employee, a one-on-one, an EAP system that we have in place who's going to help. Every organization has an employee assistance program who will have trained psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, there's like a whole support system. So the HR's job basically is not to help manage the stress, but to maybe identify and give them the right resources, tools, and the people, and connect them with the right people to sort of overcome this particular situation. At Thomson Reuters, at least, that has been our way of handling these situations.
Okay, brilliant. Virat, would you like to add to that in any way? How anxiety with SLDs is handled in an organization? Oh, okay, sorry. Is Virat?
I think Virat has dropped out.
Okay, so fine. Not an issue. So then I'll go to we have last two questions remaining. One is for, so the next question is, are there any self-improvement techniques for dyslexic people? I'm going to take this myself, if that's okay. As a parent, I think for one, dyslexia, and as Nupur said, it's not really, it's not a disease, it's not an illness, so we can't cure it in any way. But I think the question also asks for self-improvement. I'm not so sure whether improvement is a word that I would use, but yes, maybe support and maybe a more rigorous, regimented, tighter schedule, which you do need to apply because you have to sort of overcome the challenge which you have. And that is more during your schooling years, because, you have to go through the rigor of the school and the college curriculum. So you need to, you need to make more schedules. You need to follow those schedules. You need to make sure that you're good with your appointment with your, learning educators. You're good with your appointment with your teachers. You try and be open about issues which you're facing. I mean, you don't let this sort of break down your confidence. So reach out to people, self-advocacy, reach out for help. Use all the tools of assistance that are provided to you, whether it is a learner, reader, writer, reach out for all of that. And I think that is the best form of self-improvement that you can do, because there is really no other way in which you can function. You just have to manage this difficulty during your school years, college years, maybe till you reach the workforce and beyond, with the realization that I only have a learning challenge. It's not more or less. It's just connected to my learning. As someone had said to one of my students, that when you're reaching out for help, in this case, it's actually not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, because you're strong enough to say that, yes, I have dyslexia. I have this learning need. Let me take the help and get to my potential. So I think that's what I would say. I don't know if anyone wants to add to it. Otherwise, Nupur, the last question for you. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, this says a question to Ms. Nupur Jhunjhunwala. How does dyslexia affect an adult learner?
I think dyslexia is lifelong. So some of the challenges stay on forever. So I know somebody who has dyscalculia and struggles writing checks, runs a business, had to write a 7,000 rupee check, landed up writing a 7 lakh rupee check instead because didn't realize there was an extra zero. And, you know, it was one of those things, but really smart guy. So got the right person to check and had inbuilt the system within the organizational, the system for multiple people to check the checks that were going out so that he was not the only one, right? So I think those are the kind of things you don't really get over, but learn to cope with. So time management could be another one. They may be perpetually late for meetings. Very frustrating. I will meet you in 5 minutes. It's 30 minutes. Oh, I'm just coming. It's just been 2 minutes. You know, so how do you help them with those kind of things? Alarms are my favorite tool, always to be able to tell people and, you know, set those. We use them aggressively within our organization. So things like that, money management could be a challenge, you know, spellings continue to be a hassle everywhere. We just don't care about it anymore because spell check has started spelling for us. So those kind of things really do affect. I think also processing speeds, right? Like you've got to give people more time. So we had an individual who we were speaking with, and he says that you know, earlier he would judge himself for not being able to reach large content and documents. But now, since he's got his diagnosis, he's now able to explain and say, look, I will need that extra 1 day or an extra half an hour, whatever the requirement is, and negotiate it upfront. So he's not stressed about it. So I think that is also something as an adult that you get affected, right? So you sort of learn to deal with those kind of things. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I hope, I mean, yeah, I think, I hope that has satisfactorily answered all the questions. So thank you so much, Neha. This was really wonderful to, you know, have you here on the panel. And I know Virat is not here anymore with us, but it's always lovely to hear his story and, you know, share his journey. Nupur, thank you. Yeah, Sarika, I'm handing it back to you. Thank you so much to FICCI and, you know, Changing the Partnership for organizing this, because it is these dialogues actually which are going to take the movement further. I mean, we all need to sort of work together to see this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandana. I think more than that, I would love to say that it's more been an eye-opener session for all of us. I'm sure many people in the audience would echo the same thought. I mean, like I started, that the subject was new. And while we get into the depth of the subject with the examples and the real-time people, how they're managing it, I mean, it was completely eye-opener. So yes, although you have done almost everything, the wrap-up which is required to be done, but I would just like to say that for the benefit of the audience, and of course, the panelists have been talking about it. We've heard the subject. We understand there are practical challenges in hiring the people which are related to SLDs, be it dyslexia or the others. But the panel discussion as well as the discussion in the program today has shown us the way forward, how it can be done. It is not something which is impossible, and definitely those people are not disadvantaged for sure. They have an added advantage which makes them more special than others. But you really need to recognize which field, make them comfortable in that field, and more importantly, it's important that you safeguard their confidence from the school level till the college, and you get them to the workforce where they can actually pick up the right stream and make them shine. And we've heard how people have changed their streams. Mr. Virat Bhatia mentioned about a very similar thing like advertising to Copcom, and how that made a big difference to him, and how, of course, his own daughter's example. So like these are the ones which you really get to know about it, and you feel these things, smaller changes and lots of, I would say, motivation and right identification of the skill a person would love to work in it is something which can be a really, really kind of, I would say, advantage for people with the SLDs like dyslexia. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts, taking out the time. As part of FICCI, we are really thankful to our partners, Changing, and of course, all the panelists. Thank you, Nupur, Chandana, Mr. Bhatia, Neha, everybody for joining us today, the team of Changing who has been continuously working with my team to develop the content in this session. And of course, the audience with their questions, I could see as I mentioned, future is unknown. So we didn't know how much understanding a subject would be taken up by the audience, but with the kind of questions which were coming in, we were happy to understand that it's kind of an interaction. So yes, and if there anything else you would want from the audience side, anything else to be taken up with the people out here as panelists, or post thing which you want us to help you out in this domain, we are more than happy to work with you. And like I mentioned, this is just the start. We would be coming up with many of those more series with kind of a related content, and we look forward to your tremendous support. We will be happy to contribute in a meaningful way along with our partners to create an inclusive society with all of you. And thank you. I would like to say thanks to all the dyslexic people through which we have got so many inventions and we have been surviving well, right from the interface we are using to the phone we are using it. So everything is through the dyslexic. So thank you all for being there in our lives, some way or the other. So thank you all. And with this, I would like to close the session. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Sarika.
Bye-bye.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Pleasure.